Right. Episode
19.
episode 19, Brothers of Purpose. We've got Mr. Alex Parr on. How you feeling, bro?
Good, yes. Thank you so much for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Pleasure.
So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive because you're quite the entrepreneur, bro. And there's a lot of stuff that we could gain in terms of insight on so many areas. But just for those who might not be as familiar with you, could you give us just a brief introduction to yourself and what you're all about and things like that, bro?
Yeah, so we'll start in present day and move back over because it probably makes more sense. So I run a company called FitProX. So we are a personal training academy primarily. It's kind of grown arms and legs since we started the company and transcended into a few different areas. But essentially, our bread and butter is helping people who want to start in the fitness industry, get qualified and put themselves into the best position to be successful in the fitness industry. So been doing that for about 5 years. So we set up FitProX in 2020, but I actually got into kind of the education side of things in 2016. Prior to that, I was operating as a full-time personal trainer. So I was in the fitness space, and I have been for about 11 years now, which actually makes me feel old. After a couple of years of being in the PT space and working in a gym and doing all those things and looking at how I could scale and what the kind of opportunities off the back of fitness were, that's when I kind of fell on the education side of things. It seemed like an opportunity to stay in an industry that I enjoyed and talking about things that because fitness is a passion, so I can continue to talk about something that I'm passionate about, but just move slightly into a different vertical, which helped more people. So, as a PT, I was limited to how many people I was impacting and the sort of stuff that you can do with clients and the freedom that allows you. And then I looked at, right, how do I continue doing this, but get into a different part of the industry, which is going to allow me to do a few more things and impact more people. So that's been my kind of natural progression to where we are today.
Yeah, I think the education and the mentorships definitely allowed you to multiply your impact in the industry. Has that been a smooth transition for you?
To be fair, I think it was something that when I say that I kind of transitioned into the education side of things, people might assume that I, woke up one morning and made a conscious decision to say, this is what I'm going to do now, and this is the kind of change of direction. Usually in business, and you guys will know this, it tends to be, a series of different conversations which just leads you down that path. So when I first started as a PT, I knew nothing about the education side of things. And to be honest, from my time in kind of school and then college, education wasn't really something that I was particularly interested in. I didn't really like the school environment. I didn't like that side of things. I always kind of did well at school academically, but when it came to behaviorally, I wasn't, the best student ever. So to think, I'm going to do an education company, that would have been, counterintuitive for someone like me. What it was just I was PTing out of the gym. I was doing that, and I bumped into someone who later became a business partner and a friend, and he was telling me about the education side of things, and he was saying he'd set up an academy. I knew that I had people asking me about how you get into the industry, so we kind of put two and two together. We ran a pilot. I didn't even know that we were running a pilot at the time. Obviously, retrospectively, what I did is I ran a pilot, but we did one. There was much interest. People were interested in, getting into the industry and stuff like that. And then from there, someone caught wind that we were doing that. They had access to government funding. They got in touch with us. And then we ran another pilot with government funding. And then from there, it's kind of just snowballed. Obviously, there was a period where I was PTing alongside doing the education side of things, which I really think helped because obviously I still had a hand in the industry and I was still operating as a PT. So I was teaching people what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. I wasn't having to kind of go back and think retrospectively about what I used to do. I was passing on the knowledge that I was acquiring. So I was acquiring real-time knowledge and then passing it on to students, which obviously made it very authentic and genuine. And then the more and more time I spent doing that, I realized our USP was taking the information that is the most cutting edge and present and passing that on to students. So then it was just a case of going, okay, well, that was a really good point that we have for our business. How do we scale that? And how do we, I can only work with a certain amount of people to do this in a certain, demographic and, probably geographically limited to where I can operate out of. So how do we do that on a bigger level? And then just trial and error of, okay, what would this look like? And then we developed something called the mentor model, which is basically where we work with personal trainers who are active in the industry, and they find their own students, deliver our qualification to them, but they mentor them. So they haven't lost that, we haven't lost the element of passing on the most recent information. And that's obviously the issue that a lot of training providers have, is that when you make a course and when you deliver a course, regardless of whether it's fitness or doesn't matter what it is, if you print something in a month's time, in 2 months' time, in a year's time, it's out of date because things are changing all of the time. So having somebody who's actually active and who's working in that industry to help you and say, actually, this is the bit that you need to do to just pass the qualification. Okay, this bit's really important. You need to focus on this bit because even though they don't go over it that much in the course, this is the bit that's going to be the difference between being successful in this industry or not. They can actually give them that kind of real world. And, you know, it's just it's been an amalgamation of, you know, different experiences that I've had. And then just when people have came to me and said, can you do this? My kind of default response was yes. And then I would go and figure out how to do it. As opposed to, you know, a lot of people are quite skeptical of their own ability when they get into something. So they're more likely to be like, you know, I don't know if I would be able to do that. Let me get back to you, ship sailed. Yeah. Because they'll just find someone else who said yes. And then, you know, that's bit me in the ass a couple of times. It's been, you learn from that. Yeah, you learn from it. Exactly. Yeah. So it hasn't been a case of going, okay, you know, a roadmap of exactly what I wanted to do and then go from there. It's been more this is an opportunity. We tried it. Actually, it worked quite well and we're quite good at it. Let's double down on that. And how do we expand on it? And how do we do those things? Because when I first started, I got a gym after I'd been PTing for about 2 years. And then the goal was to open more gyms. And then this came up whilst I was pursuing that dream. This came up. And then I didn't even really ever remember going, well, that isn't my goal anymore. Now it's this. It just kind of happened. And before I knew it, I was too busy with that and I'd forgotten about this.
So what was that time like when you were balancing the PTing, the gym, but this opportunity was growing? What was the thought process behind, right, that's what I want to be doing. That's what I know I need to put my time into, to go almost all in on it? Because I relate to that because I'm coming to that point this year. And I imagine a lot of people listening probably are doing things themselves, but it's that fear of going all in on something.
Yeah. So the thing that kind of most made me take that decision was how many people were being impacted by this product. Because obviously I like fitness and it all stayed in that vertical, which made it helpful for me because it wasn't like I was having to pursue finance over passion. So I think that's probably the first thing to think. Is the thing that you are going to go into something that you're genuinely passionate about? Because you can be successful if you're not passionate about something, but not as successful as someone who's passionate about it. Yeah. Because they won't feel like they're working as hard. So when it starts getting hard for you, it doesn't get hard for them because they're still doing something they enjoy. So I was lucky enough for both of those things to be something that I was passionate about. And then it was just, okay, what gives me the most opportunity to impact at scale? Because, you know, the more people that you are able to benefit from what you're doing, the more legs the business has. So either you're helping a few people, but you're helping them a lot. You know, you've got a high ticket product for that individual, which is really going to be a substantial change in their life. Or you can be working with a lot of people and you could be helping them all. And, you know, you don't necessarily then have to have as high a ticket. So when I was thinking about the fitness stuff and the gym stuff, obviously you're limited to how many people you can actually work with and what sort of impact you can have on them. Because if you've got a business which serves someone and the outcome is that they get into good shape and, you know, they're happier and healthier, then that's great. But that's probably still not going to be like a top priority for a lot of people. Whereas if you've got a business that helps somebody with their finances, usually people's finances are, you know, because that's the way that they look after their families. That's the way they put food on the table. That's the way they do all those things. So if you've got a business that can help somebody help themselves and, you know, transition into a different career, that was something that was kind of more impactful and we could help more people do it. That's great. So I think for me, and, you know, a lot of these things, and this is why conversations like this are important because a lot of these revelations, they come to you later. You don't realize at the time. Exactly. You can only look back over the things that you've done and go, oh, the reason that I did this, now that I can look at it with all of the information that I had and the path that it's led me down is based on this. And then you can go back and you can look at those points and you can go, okay, so what sparked every decision?
Yeah.
And then you can see the path that you took. You can see the different decisions that you made and what the kind of common denominator was behind all of those decisions. But you can only do that in hindsight, like you were saying. And I think what it was for me is that I feel like I have an ethical responsibility as an entrepreneur to solve the biggest problem that I can. So whatever the biggest problem is, my responsibility is to solve that problem. So when I first started as a PT, the biggest problem that I could solve at the age of 19 was helping people get fit. So, and it was a big problem for a lot of people. So they wanted to get in shape. They didn't know how to do it. I was lucky enough to be involved with sports all my life and understanding healthy eating and really being passionate about going to the gym. And that was something that was never a chore for me. So if I could radiate some of that passion to other people and get them into fitness, then I was solving a big problem. Then the opportunity presented itself. Okay, what is the next problem? Well, it's people want to they hate their jobs. They went to university and they don't have the opportunities that they expected out of it because everybody went to university. They want to get into the fitness industry. They don't know how. And even if they get into the fitness industry, the chances are they won't be successful because the courses that they're doing aren't preparing them for the real life, business. So that was the problem that we decided to solve. It was helping people transition into a new career, which was a bigger problem, and you could solve it for more people. And then that's just kind of, fast forward. We're running the academy. We've got different gyms all over the country who we're helping. So we're helping other gyms to help more people. So as opposed to just helping the people that we have access to in our network, we've expanded our network so we can reach other people who can then help their network. That's just a continuation of this. And then in the past kind of year, we've been hit with a new problem. So we've been working with PureGym for the past year now. We're about to, we're working with them very closely. And their problem is they have a staff shortage. So they don't have enough good PTs to staff their gyms.
Which I think is crazy.
Well, they're expanding very quickly. Okay. So they're opening like 100 gyms this year. They opened like 60 odd last year, and that's just in the UK. They've just bought 60 gyms in the US. Obviously, they have a standard that they want to maintain across the estate. So they came to us and they presented a problem. The problem is that they didn't have enough good PTs. Obviously, we've got a pool of PTs, but we needed their help to get more PTs. So they refer people to us, we train them and give them back to them. In hindsight, that was a bigger problem. And now you're solving. So back then, I was solving a decently sized problem for individuals. Then I started to solve a lifestyle change problem for a lot of people. But I think where you can see your business change and really grow arms and legs is a multi-billion-pound company comes to you and says, we have a big problem. If you can solve problems for billion-pound companies, then that's big. If you can solve big problems for big companies, then that's where you can really look at your business and go, okay, this can be a monster. So I think, but you can only see that when you look back over. Like when I was helping people, I didn't realize that I was solving the biggest problem that I could. I was solving a bigger problem than, folding clothes at Hollister. But do you know what I mean? So it kind of transitions.
But do you notice it more now that you're aware of it? Do you notice it when you're going into new scenarios, new situations? Are you able to identify it quicker, do you think?
Yeah. So now that I've been able to look, with hindsight, now I can identify that this is my my kind of logic and my thought process. So rather than, you get to a certain stage and then that can inform you going forward. You can take the lessons that you've learned and you can go, right, we only do things that are going to solve the biggest problem. We're only interested in the biggest problems and helping the most people. Because if we can be working with 450 Pure Gyms and they can be referring 1 or 2 students per month, then you're looking at, thousands of students per year. You're solving a problem on scale for a lot of those people who want to get into a job and they want to know that they can feel confident that they're capable trainers when they get in. You're solving a huge problem for a big client. And then, you never know what that's going to lead to. You do a good job with them and then you're the people who can help people from a recruitment perspective. So, I never envisioned getting into education. I never envisioned getting into recruitment, but it's kind of what we're doing. We're helping to recruit, but we're recruiting organically for them. So as opposed to just going out and finding, there's a finite pool in any industry but with personal trainers, there's a finite pool of people who are already personal trainers. We've created a separate stream to that finite pool of people who aren't yet trainers and taking them through, transitioning them, getting them qualified, and then putting them into the company.
That's what I like, because I think you can also train them, develop them in a scope that you require them to be in. There's going to be no bad habits. So you're going to be training them as and when they come in, as you need them to be.
Yeah.
So as you've had this growth, because you've had quite a lot of growth over the last few years, a lot of success, with that tends to come more stress. How have you managed that?
Speaking to people who are more stressed than myself has been a good, speaking to people who deal with bigger problems.
Puts things in perspective.
Yeah, puts things into perspective, and it also allows you to understand that on the current trajectory, that there is more stress that awaits you. That this isn't even, this isn't even the final form. So, and knowing that when you look back at some of the things that would have, sent you into a downward spiral 6 years ago, you wouldn't even bat an eyelid at them now.
Yeah.
So things that would have been catastrophic a couple of years ago to your mental processes, to how you felt, your sense of self-worth, those things could happen 10 times a day, and you just go, pfft.
Yeah.
So I think you can look back and you can see that your resilience is growing, and then you'll know that in 5 years' time, whatever was stressful now won't even feel like, that could happen to you 10 times a day and you wouldn't be bothered. Yeah. So just knowing that you're on a journey, speaking to people who are also on that journey, but maybe a couple of steps ahead, is always, good to put things into perspective. And just understanding that, I heard someone say that even Warren Buffett has money problems. His are just bigger than yours.
Yeah.
So puts it into perspective that, and, there's a period where you're living kind of month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and you're kind of trying to get through that, and you can think back to that and you can think, right, well, I'm not there anymore. We're moving forward. And I survived every single one of those. And regardless of what happened, I'm going to survive that as well.
Yeah.
I think you learn how to work well under pressure as well.
Yeah.
Through the process.
And you learn to share. You learn to share the pressure. There's no nobility in just letting things suffocate you. You bring people in and you talk to them about it. You guys have got each other. It's an important thing to have. You bring people in that you trust and that you can share this information with. And a problem shared is a problem halved, because now you've got somebody else who's maybe thinking a little bit more objectively about this problem, because it doesn't maybe hold as much kind of, they don't have any personal attachment to that issue. So they can look at it from an objective perspective and go, yeah, this is fine. We can do X, Y, and Z. Whoever's got a problem will be fine. We'll speak to them, or whatever it may be, or there's an issue here. And usually you just get through that by kind of talking to people and, picking up the phone. And if there's people that there's an issue with, then you can just speak to them. If there's something that you're not going to be able to complete on time, or usually most issues in business, I'd say 95% of the time, are communication issues.
Yeah, I completely agree.
They're issues that someone's misunderstood, or maybe you've said something that hasn't happened for a multitude of different reasons. And the issue is that you're always operating with the information you have. So if somebody says this, someone gives you some information and then you pass on that information, but the prior information then changes, then it's just that responsibility to keep the loop going and just say, by the way, this is what we told you based on this. Something's changed. This is what's changed. This is what we've been told. And this is the information now. They can then do with that whatever they want. That's on them. What they do with that information, you've
done your duty.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they've got an issue with it, then you can come to a solution with it, or you can, they've got an issue, you can go back to that person and say, they say, no way, that's not going to fly. So then, we can have that. But it's not just kind of like, where you'll go wrong and where you'll get burnout is if you let things come at you from both sides, and you never kind of let other people get involved with it or pass on that information in any way. So I was speaking about the exclusive coaching. So essentially what we did is we rehashed the course and I added a new unit into it. And I looked at the people who had done the qualification and I was like, right, what is it about these individuals that allowed them to take the exact same input and create a different output from it? So I broke down the behaviors that these people had. I broke it down into 9 different behaviors. But it was all of these different behaviors, like proactive self-marketing, entrepreneurial mindset. If you took like 9 behaviors that would make you successful in pretty much any industry, like continued professional development and all of those different things that were like 9 behaviors. And then I started looking into behaviors, and I heard on a podcast, some guy was saying skills underpin behaviors. So that just, in fact, I was falling asleep. So I was listening to a podcast, falling asleep, and I heard that and it just went ping, got on my phone, wrote it down. I just wrote skills underpin behaviors. And then I came back to it the next day, and I went to ChatGPT, as you do, and I typed in those behaviors and I said, what skills would somebody have to portray these behaviors? So for every single behavior, I wrote it out, and it just listed the different skills. So if you wanted to be a confident and effective communicator, then these are the different skills that you would have. You would maintain eye contact with people. You'd have a clear voice. You'd do all of these things. And if you portrayed those skills, or if you mastered those skills, you would be portrayed as being a confident communicator, even if behaviorally you're actually not very confident at all.
Yeah.
So even
it's a very interesting link. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, but obviously when I went on Google and stuff, there it was a lot of people saying that sort of thing. So if you look at the behaviors that you want to portray and that you want to have, it might be you might want to be punctual, and you might want to be someone who's reliable. Now, I might be the least punctual person in the world and the least reliable person in the world, but if I have a skill of setting 9 alarms or changing my clock so that it's 10 minutes the wrong way, so that I actually get there 10 minutes late, but I'm actually on time, then I'm actually 10 minutes late, but everybody else thinks that I'm punctual because I've mastered the skill of foresight of like, okay, I know that I do all these things. So, and people will do it. There's certain people that they tell to get there 30 minutes before because they know they'll be so late. So if you can do...
To be fair, I'm late everywhere, but you're not too far behind me, bro.
Yeah, do you know what it is? Because we're optimistic.
Yeah.
We're optimistic. If it takes 15 minutes to get somewhere, I don't take it into consideration.
Gamify time. Like I play little challenges in my brain where I'm just like, right, I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to beat my record, I'm getting ready or some shit. Like, I feel like I gamify time, and it's just...
It's why it works well with us, right? But my brain is so different the way it works. My ADHD brain blocks out segments of time. So today we said 12 to indefinite finish. So for me, I'm like, right, okay, well that means I need to start getting ready by 11, and then that's going to give me that period of time plus a buffer.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to then I'll leave by this point.
Yeah.
So that gets me ready. And then Mike calls me and says, right, we're going to push it back to 1. So then I'm like, okay, that's giving me an extra hour and 20. So now I need to do this. So I'm always early, but it's annoying myself even how early I am to things. Cause my timings are always, I give myself far too much time. So I'm ready and then I leave early and then I keep him waiting.
I do think I agree though. I think when you're overly optimistic about how quickly you can execute tasks, that's when you're kind of budgeting your time all wrong.
Yeah. You're looking at your clock and you're going, I bet I can do that in 10 minutes.
That's what I mean. You gamify it, bro.
Yeah.
You literally gamify it in your brain. It's so weird.
But that's when it becomes like self-awareness becomes so important, because you can identify those things within your, like, because you've got your actual characteristics of who you are as a person, which can change over time, but they're slow. And then you've got the behaviors that you portray to the world, which, they're things that you can master different skills to give the appearance of having those behaviors. Because whether you have them or not doesn't really matter. It's more about how other people perceive those behaviors as to whether they give you opportunities or not, or, whether you seem like a reliable person to work with, or, oh, you know what? This person, like we've got a girl in the office, and, I rely on her so much for her organizational skills. But actually, she tells me that in her personal life, she's not very organized at all. So she's obviously mastered skills within a business side of things to give the illusion that she's this extremely organized person, but she's obviously doing like a lot of work behind the scenes, and she's making lists for herself, and she's got that skill in place. Whereas really, when it gets to her home life, she doesn't necessarily have that same level of organization because the stakes are lower. So she hasn't, obviously it's not just a characteristic that she follows through with. And you can see that you can see that within people's work as well.
Yeah, there's a tie between punctuality and reliability. There definitely is, because whenever I meet someone, I'm like, this person's like super punctual. I automatically feel like I can just rely on that person a lot more. There's definitely a tie there, but there's an argument for the opposite as well. Like, I feel like, why is it, I've always wondered this, why is it that depending on your social status, people don't have a problem with your punctuality dependent upon your social status? Why is this?
Demand.
It's the perception of the value of time. So if somebody's coming for a job interview with you and they're late, the status differentiator is that you need me more than I need you. Therefore, why weren't you here on time? In this dynamic, I am more important than you are, and thus my time is more valuable. If I'm desperate to get a meeting with somebody because they have a status that is above mine and they can impact me, and I need them more than they need me, I've put more value on their time than on mine.
Is that self-determined?
I don't know if it's necessarily self-determined. Obviously, different people are very good at manipulating a situation so that people perceive their time to be more valuable. You do get that in a lot of, different people have that aura around them, or they just orchestrate things so that there's a perception that their time is inherently more valuable. But it tends to be on a case by case, right? So, if you're desperate for a meeting with somebody because they can do more for you than you can do for them, then that's the power dynamic flipping. You're more willing to bend to their will. If they say to get there at a certain time, you're going to get there at a certain time, and you're just grateful if they turn up. Whereas that person then to somebody else, the power dynamic's different. So it tends to be based on, what the relationship is between those two individuals as to what, who's going to, in that situation, who they feel's time's more valuable. But yeah, it's generally based on who gets the most out of the interaction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm interested to see what you're doing moving forward, because I know you talked to me about a lot of really exciting things. How does that look for you? What's the next year, 12 months? I know when we last talked, we were talking decade.
Yeah. So where we're at the moment, obviously, we've built the business to a level where it's sustainable and it's taking over. We're constantly looking to expand and grow our offering. Obviously, the PureGym thing has been a year in the making. We started that last January, and we're at the stages now where we're pretty much in every PureGym, and we're looking to kind of grow on that. So we've got a year's worth of hard work ahead of us with PureGym, and ensuring that we can meet their standards and that we can support them and be a net positive to their business. So that's where things look at. That's what we're looking at the moment. We're looking at different systems. So now we're at a stage where we've kind of thrown the kitchen sink at it and we've made it work and we've found out that it's viable. Now we're looking at the business and we're going, okay, how do we scale this using systems? So we're very much at the systems stage of things. An issue that people often have in their business is that they do this too early, or they don't do it at all. And sometimes we do this too early. You've got this amazing system, but you have nothing coming through the system. And as a result, you've overcomplicated something that you didn't know necessarily that you didn't need to, because generally the systems come in place when the money's coming in. So when the money's coming in, that's when the systems can come. Otherwise, you're investing in something that doesn't really save you any money because the systems are there to save you time. So that's where we're at the moment, investing in these different ways that we can scale the business without having to necessarily grow the team outwards. That's the moment that you hit the tick on the curve, because now you can increase revenue without having to increase expenditure linearly. So that's what people talk about when they talk about exponential growth. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. We're at this very kind of early stage of that tick, but it's gratifying because every month you can see it more and more and more. And then for me, different opportunities have obviously came in as a result of working with bigger companies and doing these things. I talked a little bit about kind of saying yes to everything and figuring it out, and I think that was predominantly something that I was doing in the past 10 years of my career. Now it's about kind of protecting the energy that I have with what I'm doing and only saying yes to things which make complete sense. So passion is the first one, making sure that it's things that I remain passionate about. So I've had an opportunity with a business in Dubai They basically employ personal trainers. They do everything for them: visa, residency, get them clients, do business coaching, all that sort of thing. Obviously, Dubai is something that I'm interested in just because of, the nature of business over there, the nature of the direction that the UK is potentially going in. Also having a global company, so working with PureGym potentially across their entire estate, which ranges from the Middle East to the East Coast of America. So now being in the UK isn't the kind of most important thing to me.
Yeah.
So when we had the opportunity to do the Dubai thing, it just made sense. They had a business that needed somebody who understood the fitness industry and had access to newly qualified personal trainers. That's a no-brainer for me. So I've got access to newly qualified personal trainers. I like to think that I know a thing or two about this industry. So then that was just kind of natural. How does this impact on my current business? Well, destination-wise, so we've got PTs who are coming through our courses, and we're now supporting them to move to Dubai. So that has a net positive impact on FitProX because the students who are coming through, they are going to be unbelievable testimonials. So-and-so was doing whatever job, wasn't in the fitness industry, 6 months later, qualified with us, business coaching with us, now lives in Dubai, making X amount on their own terms, enjoying life.
Yeah.
So what that's going to do is it's going to put more people into the machine of FitProX because we've got a pathway that we can lead people through to a genuinely better life that some people would be looking for. So
Love that.
then in addition to that, it's another opportunity to expand FitPro to a different country. So we are setting up the academy over there so people can get qualified in Dubai, live in Dubai. And then you you've got a global industry, you got access globally, so you can start doing that there. Well, if that model works, then why wouldn't it work somewhere else? And then obviously also having the opportunity to be involved with the business and the benefits that's coming with being able to get my own residency there as a business owner in Dubai and those sort of things, so that if I did want to go over there or move over there or whatever it may be, I've got that option as well. But I think the important thing, and I think this is sometimes where I went wrong in the past, and I think it's the issue that some people have, if it doesn't align necessarily with your passion, and if you're in a vertical which is too far away from your current main business, then all that's happening, you've got loads of drills digging for gold, but they just don't get deep enough. None of them manage to get deep enough. Whereas you'd be far better staying close to your vertical with things which impact it. So this business positively impacts this business, and this business positively impacts this business. Therefore, splitting your time across them makes sense. I think in the past I've been like, oh, well, this is in education, so I'll do this as well. But actually it was too far away. So I got into, I was helping a company with content creation apprenticeships. And for all, content creation was a big part of what I did. The actual content creation wasn't the bit that I was passionate about. So all it did was drag me away from the main thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And would you say you're somebody who does have multi-interests in that respect as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's different elements to the business which I really enjoy. So there's the marketing side of things that I really enjoy. I really enjoy the building process. So I really enjoy being involved in the building stage, seeing something that was an idea come to fruition, because everything you see around you started as an idea, which is crazy. This microphone started as an idea. Somebody had an idea about it, and then over time they've developed that. I think sometimes if you do just the same thing day in, day out, it'll become mundane. So it's good to always be moving forward and always be doing slightly different things so that you don't get that kind of fatigue. And especially if the skill set that you're acquiring complements different areas of business that you can move into. But it's just important to have things not necessarily have one thing take away from the other. I think that's sometimes where it can be difficult.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I relate to that. What I'm interested in is when you're outside of your office space, your work time, how does that look? What are your non-negotiables? How do you not just maintain, but how do you continue to allow yourself to grow within the workspace through what you do outside of it?
I'd say a big part of making sure that I'm kind of always on top of my work is training. So committing to going to the gym pretty much every day. Obviously, having different goals. I think it's important to have different goals. What I was saying about the business side of things, if you just have business goals, then, you know, if you don't achieve those goals, and this probably goes back to when I was a personal trainer, if you get a client and you say, right, our only goal is to lose weight. So this week, something's fluctuated and you haven't lost weight, you failed. That's when motivation drops off a cliff. However, if you're tracking different metrics, are we trying to get a bit stronger? Are we trying to gain muscle? Are we trying to lose weight? Are we trying to maybe increase our, you know, cardio, doing a few more runs? So now they've got a multitude of different goals. Well, this week their weight stayed the same, but actually they added 10 kilos to their deadlift, or they ran a little bit further, or they ran a bit faster. So now every week you're achieving. So regardless of what you do in terms of the weight loss side of things, we know that over time that'll go down. I know that over time FitPro will grow. So having different goals, so like having physical goals, making like, you know, setting myself targets within my own training, having a hobby, so basketball, still setting myself targets within basketball to try and improve, even though realistically it makes no difference whether I improve or not. It's just like a personal thing to try and improve. So I try and have 2 kind of professional goals and 2 personal goals, or 2 like
consistently.
I try and have 2 like kind of CPD goals, so things that are kind of mental goals. So the business falls into like a mental goal for me. So I have goals within my business, which is a mental goal, and then I have another mental goal which I kind of stick to. So at the minute I'm learning Spanish, so they're my 2 mental goals, and then I'll have 2 physical goals. So my 2 physical goals, one of them will be kind of visual, so trying to improve visually, and then one of them will be kind of just an actual, you know, physiological goal. So for the time being, I'm trying to, I'm doing like some plyometrics training to jump higher. And then you've got like a multitude of different things that you're kind of aiming towards. And it just keeps things interesting. It means that you're not kind of single-minded, single-focused, but you can actually focus on your other goals more because you're doing other things. So actually when you come back to the work, you're kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you're like jumping in it. And then when you go back to your training, you're kind of excited to do that again. And the excitement's there for all of them. And then you just need to pick up on what excites you. Like what is actually, like what are those things that you get excited to do? I stopped playing basketball for a while. And then I remember I decided that I'd go to the park and like, it started getting a little bit overcast and I started getting really worried. And I was like, oh no, it's going to start raining. And I was going to go to the park and play basketball. And then like I was driving and it wasn't raining and it was like the sun had cleared out and it was sunny through the clouds. And I was so excited. I was like, yes. I mean, I was like 28. I was like 20. Do you know what I mean? I was I was like looking at my basketball on the on the seat and I was like, and then I was like, put my shoes on and like, I think I ran into the park. Do you know what I mean? So find things that like genuinely excite you like that. And
I love that.
What I wanted to ask you actually was, whenever I meet people who are like very well optimized and, you know, you've got your shit together, you understand what you're aiming towards, I always like to ask, is there any questions about yourself or about life that you haven't had answered yet?
That's a good question. I guess sometimes I think about what does the finish line look like, and is there one? I think that's something that I kind of sometimes stop to think.
In literal terms or metaphorically?
Metaphorically, in terms of the like
angle.
Where are you growing this to? Will there be a point where I go, this is enough, this is it, this is enough? And because I've thought that maybe that point has come and gone many times. So the point where I thought that'll be a point where you feel like complete
contentment.
Contentment. So you can be kind of happy with where you're going, but then sometimes you don't always feel satisfied because there's always, it's like anything, there's always another milestone to hit and there's always another milestone to hit. Sometimes I wonder if there'll be a stage where I just go, this is the right amount of pressure and able to do the things that I want to do completely. That often comes with your circle as well. So if you are spending time around people who maybe have achieved so much in their life, and if you've achieved more than them and you never expand that circle, you could probably, stop developing there. And a lot of people do. They achieve just more than everybody else that they're around.
Yeah.
They're a big fish in a small pond, and they stop. And, where I'm at the moment is that the every time I grow, I jump into a different pond, and I wonder if I'll ever
Stop.
I wonder if there'll ever be a moment where I sit down and I go, I wouldn't want to be doing any more, or I wouldn't want to necessarily develop this anymore. I'm very happy. Because every month our goal is to do more students. Every month my goal is to put more PTs into.
I think it depends on what drives you, because in some cultures you just work till you die, and it's like such an ingrained part of your mentality to do what you love and do what you enjoy that you just continuously.
I like that. I like the answer.
I think this culture's heading that way. Like, when do you think our state pension's going to kick in?
Oh, mate, you can't rely on that.
But do you think it'll ever kick in?
No.
I'm thinking by the time we get there will be no state pension. So
I agree.
you're going to have a lot of people who are just, I think when my parents started going to work, it was 58 for a woman and 60 for a man, and then it pushed up to 62 and 60 and 65, and now it's 70, and will that just continue? And therefore you've got a lot of people who've kind of been in the middle ground, who've never really managed to get a nest egg, who are just going to have to work forever unless they've got a private pension. So I think if you feel like genuine contentment from the work that you do, and you feel like a sense of pride in it, it doesn't really, and I know it sounds cliche, but it doesn't really feel like work at all. When I first started PTing, I felt like a bandit. I felt like I couldn't believe people were giving me 250, 300 quid to come and learn how to exercise. Because obviously, someone would give me like 300 quid in cash. I hadn't seen that amount of cash unless it was my birthday. And they were giving me it every other month for personal training. And that's when I knew, wow, like I like this. Because, I would be around I'd spend, when I was at college, I used to spend like 3, 4, 5 hours in the gym anyway with the guys who worked there, train with them, chat, go and get shots up in the gym, come back, eat, train again, chat to them. Like I was there for like 4 or 5 hours for free. And then you're doing that in a PT environment, you've made 100, 150 quid. You are like,
brilliant.
Yeah, But you feel like, I honestly had to like train myself not to feel like I was, a con man. But really, it wasn't that much money to them. It was a lot more to me. And they were getting value out of it.
Love that.
I think that's a good place.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. I appreciate that a lot, man. Thank you for coming on.
But I really appreciate you guys getting me in. I think it's interesting when you see people, setting up something like this, and I totally understand the mindset behind it, bringing people together and chatting to them. Because, and this is, a question that I had for you guys. So I actually found that off camera, I'll have a lot of these conversations. I came to your guys the other day, and we had these conversations, right? And, I don't know about you guys, like particularly, but I came from like a working class background. Like my mom worked part-time in a bank. My dad worked full-time, like a lot of hours. I think the big change in my life was getting a mentor who'd set up his own business, who was from nothing. He was from, the exact same sort of background. He was from Walker. He hadn't, came through business. He hadn't been to a private school where business was discussed freely and openly. And I didn't think you could start your own business. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know anyone who had their own business. I didn't know it was a thing. And I realized that it was conversations with like-minded individuals who like allowed me to understand that, you can set up a business. You get into a room with a couple of like-minded people. They have this skill set. I have this skill set. We bring, we do what we can do to bring in the money, to do the thing, to get it going, and we find people. What kind of motivated you to start wanting to have these conversations?
So for me, it was a fairly clean change, where I went from the last 10 years of my life where I was high functioning, but I was doing majority of the other things wrong, whether it been my addictions, the cultures, the people I spent my time with. And when I made such a clean break from that, I knew I had to leave everything that I'd previously done behind. So I was, in a way, I was forced to change my groups, change my surroundings, change my cultures, change my behaviors. But what really honestly blew my mind was when I realized, and I think it is this simple to be successful. If you do the right things consistently, if you spend time with the right people, and if you have consistent habits and you're disciplined, everything works its way out. And that's all it is to me. All I try and do is I try and be a better person every day. I try and help people. I try and spend time with people like yourself who I see as more successful than me at this current point. Learn from them, steal the information, because that's effectively all we do. You know, I'm learning from you by doing this, and I try and implement that into what I'm doing and surround myself with the people that I think can bring me up instead of bring me down. I'm a big believer in the power of 5.
Yeah.
Massive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just sat down and David Light one day and we're like, we need to...
You've been trying to get me to do it for ages.
Yeah. I think for me as well, like obviously we all know how important content is in the modern day world, but no one really talks about like how powerful long form content actually is for people who are a little bit more introverted. I wouldn't consider myself extroverted, but when I'm podcasting, I couldn't care less that the camera's on because I'm just having a conversation. So for me, it was actually leaning into a creative style of making and producing content that suited my personality as well. Because I do like to talk for long periods of time, but also I'm learning so much from the person in front of me, and they're potentially enjoying the conversation as well. I thought that's what podcasting does for people. That's what it's all about. And it's also something that probably more businesses should probably look at.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because, you know, it's boomed, but it's still not like in Newcastle, for example, if I said name all of the podcasts in the local area, like you would probably struggle to get past like 5, maybe even 10 at a maximum. Like I would genuinely struggle to name them all. So it's like as soon as you start one, you're actually creating almost like a huge opportunity, not just for yourself, but a lot of people in your local area. And then obviously the networking element of it is sort of like invaluable as well.
Community.
The people that you meet through doing this, people like yourself. But the mental health side of it was quite a big one for me. So I've had my fair share of mental health struggles. And being diagnosed with type 1 bipolar doesn't really give you a lot of answers. There's not a lot of information out there on the diagnosis. And just to give you a perspective, it's like type 1 is like Kanye West. So like when you have a diagnosis as such and it's unmedicated, it's like it really is a soul-destroying diagnosis to have because there is so much emotional control and emotional stability that you have to work on that most people just take for granted. So like on a day-to-day, most people don't even realize some of the challenges and struggles that I face because of it. But it's just because I've had to get to a point where it's actually something that I manage well. And I thought, I'm never going to be a spokesperson for like everyone who has bipolar, but I know that in myself, I did struggle to wrap my head around representation because I couldn't see anyone who I could really resonate with who was actually talking about it. So I thought maybe this podcast would also be another opportunity for me to be a bit more vulnerable about that diagnosis, some of my mental health struggles, and some of the struggles that people probably have to go through regardless of what diagnosis they have. Like I know yourself in the past, we've spoken about like your ADHD and what you've had to like deal with managing that as well. Like, I don't know, is it something that you still...
I think for me, a big part of it is that like moving my body.
Yeah.
So,
because I feel like it propels you at this stage. Like it's...
Yeah, the ability to think about multiple things and keep a track of where multiple things are without having to necessarily feel overwhelmed. And I think, you know, it's interesting what you're saying about like that representation, but also people finding out what individuals are actually like, because you see a snapshot of people. I think long form content's good because you get an overall sense of what that individual's like, and it's why you've seen recently in the media certain people with long form podcasts, they're nigh on impossible to cancel because people will take snapshots, and I'll use Joe Rogan as an example, but there's been the media's tried to tarnish him. Unfortunately, there's 3 hours times 2,000 of him talking, so people have got this vast amount of information on what he thinks, how he puts himself across, the people he's platformed, the individuals he's brought in to speak to, his beliefs, his ideologies, everything. They've got all of that. So when you go, oh, he's a this or that, you can go, no, he's not, because I've listened to loads of it, and also you can go and listen to it as well. And there's been a couple of people like that, and I think on a smaller scale, people buy into people. 30, 40 years ago, you didn't know who the CEOs of huge companies were. Like, you couldn't name the CEOs of massive companies in the past because there was a corporation, there was a logo, and that was it. They didn't want you to know who they were. They didn't care. Now you've got people like Richard Branson and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and, all of these, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, all of these individuals who they have to be out there in the open because people want to know who they are. Does that person's values align with mine, and do I want to be a customer? And look, you've even seen people who are like getting rid of their Teslas because they don't think Elon Musk's values align with it. That is also fine. Like, you have purchasing power. I think it's the most important power that you have as a human being is where you spend your money. That's the biggest effect you can have. I think where you spend your money is more important than how you vote. Because if you want to make change, you do it with your money. People listen when the money starts drying up. People start making changes, and if you're not happy with something, but it's just interesting, and I think it's something that one, for the people who are listening, these conversations more like act as an opportunity to be inside of a room that you wouldn't usually have been in. Mike, me and you've had loads of conversations where I wish there was a camera, because there were just really good in-depth conversations where we just get into loads. I'd learned so much from there, and as those conversations had fundamentally changed me as a human being. I feel like if you're a person who is willing to listen and understand, some of the conversations we've had have fundamentally changed who I am as a person. You're on a course and you have a conversation with someone that just knocks you like that. And it's very, very slight. It's very, very slight, and you it keeps you on the straight and narrow because you've got these different inputs of people that you respect.
It's like an affirmation, isn't it? Like,
it's a different perspective.
It's powerful.
And you can go, wow, I didn't think about it like that. Actually, you know what? Now that Mike said it like that, and I can see it from his perspective, then totally, I can totally, and then you don't think about it every time, but it just changes something in the chemistry of your brain.
I agree with that. I think that's actually one of the most fundamental points of what I get out of this, and I imagine what other viewers get out of this, which is, you'll hear something and it will just slightly change your perspective. It's something you might have thought about, but it's a whole different viewpoint, and it just clicks something. I think that's the value of it.
Tapping into different worlds.
And especially for people who are working class, who've come from who haven't had who haven't been exposed to things like finance and business and things that can really change the trajectory of your life. Having somebody else who can speak in a way that you understand and you can get on. And even for you, Mike, talking about, the struggles that you've, we've gone.
You're still going.
Oh, I'm still going. So, well, I'll finish on this, but even for you, Mike, talking about the struggles that you've had, from the outside looking in, you are obviously like an extremely physically strong human being. Like, from the outside looking in, you're well put together. You're the person that people rely on for fitness, and they'll come to you to help them change their life. And then to understand that, you're going through things yourself, when from the outside looking in, you go, look at that guy. Like, there's no way that they, do you know what I mean? This guy looks like he, chews through iron bars and just like, do you know what I mean? Like, seeing this guy deadlift 300 kilos, but then you going, actually, you know what? This is how it is. And regardless of what the outside looks like, it's not always the same story on the inside. And I think that's powerful because you can go, well, if he can open up and I can deal with what I'm dealing with.
So, absolutely.
I love that.
Powers, bro. Powerful.
Cool.
That was awesome. Cheers, brother.
No worries whatsoever.